Why do we always take pictures of kids when they're missing like their 4 front teeth?
Because our parents did it to us.
I'm like flipping through pictures of Roman and he's just like smiling and it's all gum and tongue. It's gross. What's going on?
You know,
what?
Photoshop.
Yeah, photo. We can use AI bots now to like insert teeth.
Yeah. I bet you somebody's already done that.
I'm sure.
Somebody's already created a filter to fix teeth.
Yeah. Dr. Leonard Shivovitz, DDS, to side hustle. Everybody needs a side hustle. Speaking about side hustles, Roman and I were playing with ChatGPT the other night. And he's like, I want to, because he knows I can do images now. And so he got real big in. So we started making like these characters in ChatGPT. And we made like a superhero and his twin sister, and we gave them a backstory, and then we made the enemy and the reverse. And then I was like, you know what? Let me just see. And I was like, make this into like a traditional 1980s style comic book cover. And it looked so good that I went, I have to make this. I have to make this into a comic book now. But I need to rely. The problem is relying too much on ChatGPT because like, I'm still at the point where ChatGPT will not give me more than, a couple paragraphs when I ask for pages of data. Because when I ask for pages of data, it says, I need 48 hours. And I said, no, you don't. You're a robot. So we've been playing around with that. That was fun. Also, no liquid death for me today. I've moved on. I'm more sophisticated. I'm now French Maison Perrier, which stands for House of Perrier.
So I'll continue with the liquid death theme and say that I did just purchase 2 cases, not cases in terms of 24 cans, because a box of liquid death does not contain 24 cans. It contains 8. But I got a coupon, right?
Yeah.
I'm a sucker for a coupon. I had $6 off a $25 order. And so I got...
So you spent $98 on 2 cases of liquid death.
Yeah. So I got the... what used to be the golfer.
Yes, it's now called Dead Billionaire.
Dead Billionaire, the lemonade tea.
The lemonade tea one, yeah.
And I also got the green tea version. And so those arrived this morning. I promptly dropped it, carrying it into the house, but
and they all shattered all over the floor. Now your entire kitchen just smells of green tea and
Dead Billionaire.
And Dead Billionaire. There's no better way to do it than that. Near.
If you're struggling with the complexity of Microsoft 365 deployment, management, and automation, it's time to check out CoreView. Created by MSPs for MSPs like you, they help you with the end-to-end Microsoft 365 administration from the moment you set up a new tenant. Packed with things like unified visibility and control of all your tenants from a single UI, to powerful no-code automation engine, baseline tenant configurations, drift remediation, and much more, you can supercharge your productivity and do even the most time-consuming tasks with just one click. Work effortlessly and deliver best practices to your customers today with CoreView. To learn more, visit atmsp.link/CoreView.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the All Things MSP Podcast. I'm your host, Justin Esgar. With me always is my good friend, co-host, podcast producer extraordinaire, Mr. Eric Anthony. Eric, what is happening today other than the fact that I have a crink in my neck for my new camera setup? I'm trying to figure it out.
Such a crick in the neck. Anyway, you know what? It finally is getting cold here in North Carolina, which is kind of good. I know you guys have been cold for a little bit, but we actually had our first morning where it was, I think it was exactly at freezing.
We had snow last night. Actually, I got a weather alert last night. It said death-defying rain and snow, and I was like, Do the raindrops have guns? What does that mean exactly? Weather? Like, is the snow poisoned? What? I don't understand. I'm picturing like snowflakes with little like knives being, yay, get them, like all the way down.
It's because they don't have an election to sensationalize anymore.
Yeah. Weather. Thanks, weather. Well, I'm glad you're good. Things are good. I wanted to just put out there real quick. I will be out of my house for the first time in many, many years. No, I'm kidding. But I was elected to speak at Channel Pro next year. The New Jersey show, Atlanta, and Los Angeles. I will be doing a presentation on something. I don't know exactly what. I think I have an idea. I have to write it. Obviously, this is all really early. But it's going to be related to the biggest issues facing MSPs, which will just be a culmination. I'm just going to replay episodes of the show and be like, we talked about it here, and we talked about it there, and we talked about it here. And thanks, my bit. That's my bit. And then walk off stage.
There you go. Well, and we love our friends at Channel Pro, so I'm very glad that you're getting a chance to speak there.
Yeah, I'm super excited to do not just one, but to do the 3 shows and kind of start meeting some of the people that are out there. I do love it when like I do connect with people who have listened to this show before. Like I think I've talked about this before where like we've had people who have come to us for Halo implementation and they're like, wait, are you Justin from All Things MSP? And I'm like, I am. They're like, that's so cool. I'm like, the fact that you know me is even cooler to me than it is that I'm talking to you. Like you don't understand what this does for my ego.
Yeah. And I do want to say like, Justin and I are real people. Like if you reach out to us on LinkedIn, we will have a conversation. I just had one yesterday with an MSP who found us on the show and then didn't realize he lives like 5 minutes from my house.
I still would only talk to them over Zoom. I wouldn't go anywhere near. I wouldn't go to their house. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. Well, that's cool, right? Yeah, people think we're just in the box and we're not. We are real people. We also do have feelings. I'm just putting that out there.
And
where there's a great place? You know what a great place is to share your feelings? And that is from the group. So we have a post from Steven Johnson from the group. I'm going to read it. Here we go. I'm looking to outsource lead generation and appointment setting to a third-party company. Many I've reached out to are either way too expensive or don't have any guarantees. I've been told about this particular company. Has anyone used them before? Another company didn't seem like a good fit. I'm purposely not saying the companies. You can go look on the post. If you have any suggestions, I'd be interested in what works for you. This is an interesting topic because the amount of times I've spoken to MSPs about outbound marketing and what we do it blows my mind. And there's so many people that are out there that are selling I'm putting selling in quotes, services for outbound marketing. And some of them are friends with us and some of them are not, right? We'll say it, just leave it at that. The truth is, it's less about what you're doing and more about how long you're doing it. It's that consistency piece that I think is the most important part. Now, as for what Steven's specifically asking, outsource lead generation appointment setting, I'm going to steal this one from Paul Green because I think his answer trumps for all of this. Don't go to a company. Find a work from home parent. Find a parent who doesn't have like a non-full-time person who's an adult. We're not talking about like, you don't want college kids making these phone calls. You want adults who have some sort of like understanding of the world to be making these phone calls. You need to create lists for them, which you would have to do for your lead generation people anyway, or find some way to cultivate that information. But let them do the calling. You know how many times I get phone calls being like, hi, I'm calling on behalf of Eric Anthony and would like an appointment with you. And I would be like, great, talk to my secretary. No, I'm just kidding. But like those things happen all the time, right? Or when you call, it's always a third party. So find someone like that because they're going to be significantly cheaper than a service.
Yeah. I have some thoughts, as you might.
You wouldn't be here if you didn't. It'd be a weird
You probably
show.
saw it in my face. So I will go along with you and say, yes, I think it is important for you to at least try this yourself. Okay? Because unless you do it yourself, you're not going to understand what goes into it. Right? I will say that there are experts out there who will do a better job than you. 100%. And this falls into the category, if you have the money to do it, it's not a bad thing. But if you don't have the money to do it, there are other options, right? Especially if you have a lot more time than money, you can do it yourself. Now, a couple of things that I would say ahead of time is that you do need to find out who your ideal customer is and what your messaging for that ideal customer is before you get started with either plan, whether you're doing it yourself or whether you're hiring somebody else. Because your value prop, your messaging, and your ideal client is going to determine who they call and what they say when they call them. Okay? So I'll say that. But then the other thing I want to say is after you get that lead, and this is where a lot of MSPs fail, they don't have the right nurturing program and sales process to properly follow up with that lead.
No, 100%. There's a way to do it, which is what some of these companies will provide to a degree, but not always. Some of them are just appointment bookers, but you need to be able to follow the path for them. So I think even before you go to lead gen and appointment setting, figure out your ideal client profile, ICP, and also figure out what that funnel looks like to get them through your sales cycle, which is getting them on your mailing list, having a free consultation, whatever it is, like get a Zoom call. Like our sales process, our sales process is 3 phone calls, right? That initial, that deep dive, and then that payment one. Like that's how we usually win up on our sales calls, but your company might be different, Steven. Like you need to figure out what that looks like. And you need to standardize and basically document that process. So this way, if and when you don't want to do it and you want to hand it off to an outsourced company, they follow your way of doing things. And this way, you know that they're booking the right types of appointments. A great example of this is you can go get yourself a third-party booker, and they might be calling people they might be just be booking appointments for people who have cracked laptop screens, and that's not what you do.
Yeah. Yeah. I've talked to MSPs who have hired a lead generation company who were booking meetings for them, and they did not even have an agenda, a PowerPoint, anything for actually running that meeting. Like you have to have that stuff in place or you are wasting the money spending it trying to get those booked meetings.
Yeah. So, Steven, I think it's a great idea to go look at these things, but before you do any of it, I would just hope that you have your entire process laid out first, because these companies aren't going to tell you that. They're going to just say, yeah, sure, we'll get you 100 bookings a month or whatever it is, because they get paid on that. They don't get paid on whether or not they're finding you the right customers through your sales cycle. So like, keep that in mind before you sign on the dotted line.
I would say that there are probably some good ones who will tell you you're not ready yet and will help you get ready.
Yeah, but they're probably more expensive than Steven wants to spend.
Probably more expensive than most.
Good, fast, cheap, and you can only pick one. Well, thanks, Steven, for writing it from the group. If you want to be from the group, check us out at facebook.com/allthingsmsp, and maybe next time we'll pull your question from the group.
Have you ever wondered how much time your team spends in meetings and what the real impact was? Well, wonder no more. With Produce 8's latest release, you're getting insights into meeting effectiveness and productivity metrics that will improve the way you do business. Some of the benefits are seamless integrations with leading platforms such as Google Calendar, Outlook, Microsoft Teams, Zoom, and Slack to help you streamline meetings, especially for your MSP teams. Executive dashboards help gain insights into meeting investments, including salary breakdowns and resource allocation. That gives you enhanced views into profitability. Team sentiment analysis provides understanding of employee morale through user sentiment analysis, leveraging feedback to improve productivity and workplace well-being. Team empowerment gives access to personalized reports, real-time metrics, and goal-setting features for better work-life balance and productivity control. Explore how Produce 8 is revolutionizing the MSP landscape at atmsp.link/Produce 8. Improve your productivity and propel your MSP business to new heights with Produce 8.
So I want to talk something about today. We talk about PSAs all the time on this show, and we talk about manipulation of like how to deal with tickets and how to deal with customers. But there's something that we haven't really talked about, which came up on an Aces After Dark just the other day, which is data collection. And I mean this in the regards of like, what data are you collecting about clients in your PSA and what are you doing with it? Because there was a really interesting talk about clients who want reports versus clients who don't, and are you collecting data if they don't want reports? And I certainly have clients who are like, I want a report every month with all these security things, and I'm like, sure, knowing damn well you ain't reading it, right? So the topic had come up about how much data do you put in your PSA about a client? Are you collecting assets? Are you collecting software? Are you collecting programmatic pieces about things? And why?
Well, I can tell you that there's a big topic of conversation going on in the cybersecurity world around asset management and making sure that you do have a complete list of all of the assets being used, whether that's hardware, whether it's software applications, whether it's cloud applications, whether it's data repositories, because if you don't know it's there, there is no way you are defending it. And so that's become a big conversation. And I think that's part of this, right? Because a lot of your PSAs will collect or at least store that type of information.
Yeah, but even to a degree, because I think the problem is when we talk about, let's talk about assets just for a second, and I mean physical assets, there's such a breakdown between what a client thinks asset management is and what we think asset management is, because a client wants to know about every keyboard and trackpad and power adapter and things that don't report back. Like there's no way to know the serial number of this keyboard. There legit isn't. I even tried with OS Query. It will only pull the serial number if it's plugged in via USB. So there's no way to, and that's what the client wants. And that's not what we're holding or necessarily what from a cyber, because do I need to protect this keyboard? Maybe. What if someone swapped it out with a modified Bluetooth one? I don't know, I'm making this up. But
no, but it's a valid point.
Right. So there's that problem to be said. That's number one. Number two, I think in problems of asset management is trying to get a platform to collect data from 90 other platforms that may or may not play well, right? Great example. We run into this into our industry all the time. Our Halo PSA ties into our Meraki, so we pull all the Meraki data into clients and we sign. However, Ubiquiti very famously doesn't have an open API to do anything with.
Yeah.
How many access points you have at this client? No.
Well, and that's, to me, that's an issue, right? Because if you can't know that they're there, how are you possibly managing them? Except manually, and that's a lot of work.
And keep in mind, there are ways to find that out. Obviously, I'm exaggerating for the sake of this story. Yes, you can sign into the Ubiquiti web interface and get the information, whatever. I don't need everyone people are listening right now going, he should know how to do this. I know how to do it. But the question comes down to is, are you doing anything with this data? So the software one came up in this call the other day. Another consultant who has built out their own kind of PSA was showing that they're keeping track of all the software that's on a device. And so I asked, because I was very curious about this, do they have some sort of agent that's pulling that information into their PSA or are they manually doing it? And it turns out that their triage person, anytime the client calls and says, I'm having a problem with X, then records that that person has X. And that's my problem with data, is anything that's manual is always wrong, because as soon as they delete that program, you don't know, right? So, or they have programs you don't know about. So it has to be automated. But then again, you're pulling that data in. Are you going to do anything with it? And so that begets this circle of, should we be collecting it? Why? How? What do we do with it? And like, is it for reporting, or is it for cyber? Is it for to say that you have the biggest data repository? You know?
I could make a joke there, but I'm not going to. And I say that in terms of assets, if it needs to be managed, it needs to be on a list. If it needs to be protected, it needs to be on a list. And that's the basic litmus test for me as to whether or not I need to be tracking that. Now, I think it's an excellent point that what if you have an asset that you can't update automatically because there's not an API, or it's not discovered automatically by your RMM or your MDM? That's a problem, because now you've got to create a recurring ticket to check on that asset periodically to make sure that it hasn't changed.
We have that. We have a recurring every Wednesday. My ticket system explodes because we have recurring tickets to check on a whole bunch of Synologies we still have out there with steps on what to do, because we have no
mission critical.
Right. And there's no tool out there that we use. Maybe we can use something like Domotes or whatever it is, but they're expensive to pull that data in. Right. So we run into that issue of now we're in a worse position. In my position, I'm going to pull the curtain back, because now we only have like half of the data.
Yeah.
Which is worse than no data. Because I think if you had no data, you can claim incompetence or, lack of knowledge. Not really incompetence, but like the lack of knowledge of things exist if you have no data. If you have some data, you're like tiptoeing and being like, I got something, but I don't know what. And then if you have all the data, now you have what my friend Ben Morales calls is BDE, big data energy, which I promised him I'd make a t-shirt out of. But does the client care? Because the question comes down to is, on a monthly, like when we send our invoices once a month, our invoice says the list of the devices, and we have all the devices listed as part of an automated through Halo. What we don't list on there is the operating system of every device, the users on every device, all the software, or how many versions of Teams is across the board, or how many versions of Adobe are across the board, to make sure people are updated. Because assumingly everyone is always updated, which obviously they're not. So, right. And we would never tell a client, well, half your fleet's on 14.7 and the other half is on 14.7.1, because we just didn't get to it, because we don't want to open Pandora's box on that. It's not really our fault. There's a reason why, but whatever. But so do we need that data then? What are we doing with it? And that's like that keeps coming up over and over again, because we should be doing something with it. Should we be reporting on it? Should we not? What does the client need to know?
I think the client needs to know very little, actually, unless the client requests it.
Which they will then throw it away.
Follow me here. Mm-hmm. I'll use your 14.7 to 14.7.1, example.
Sure.
What is the purpose of having that information? The purpose of having that information is so that your team knows that they have X number of devices still on 14.7 that need to be upgraded. Mm-hmm. That's the point. The point is for you. The point is for you to better manage, be more efficient at managing, and be defensible, reduce your risk, knowing that you have done all the right things. And yes, you are going to sometimes have a gap where you have 10 on 14.7 and 10 on 14.7.1. But as long as it's documented and you have a plan for remediating it, that's defensible. Like you can say, we have an automated process for updates. It didn't work on these 10 machines, so we created tickets to do it, and it's only been 3 days.
Right.
right?
The
That's
automated
defensible.
process thing, I think, is a real tough one also. And I don't want to go too far into that today because I know that drives down a path of about PSAs, because there's a lot of things where we talked about you should be automating certain tickets when things are happening, but then you need to have enough staff to handle it. Otherwise, your ticket system becomes a snake that's chasing its own tail, right? But the idea of collecting the data from the client, because you can get really gnarly with how much data you collect. Here, I'll give it another example. When we were originally building your computer inventory, which we stopped building, one of the things that I thought was important that clients wanted to know was how many minutes they're using with phone.com. So we built an API to pull that information into this dashboard that they can see. Never once in 16 years has a single client said to me, how many minutes am I using in phone.com? But for whatever reason, I was like, this is a data point I know I can pull in and I can show somebody. It must be important. And there's where I'm going with this. How do we determine what is and not important?
So I'm going to use the phone example for a minute. Now, 16 years ago, when people were still paying, I don't know, were we paying for long distance 16 years ago?
I don't know, Grandpa.
I can't remember. I mean, back then, when you were paying per minute for long distance, that would have been an important number. So I would say if it's mission critical, if it affects the budget, and if it affects the risk.
I like that. I like those criteria. I like the criteria because if it affects the mission critical part, that's obvious. I think that's a go-to, right? You should know all the mission critical pieces, right? Does it affect the business and does it affect the risk? Or sorry, the budget and the risk. The budget piece I think is important because whether or not someone has a piece of software on their computer may or may not affect their budget, but it may affect their, you know what? I think it's a 2 out. You know what it is? It's good, better, cheap. It's pick 2. If it affects 2 things, I don't know why I'm holding 3 fingers up. If it affects 2 things, if it's mission critical and it's risk, or it's mission critical and it's budget, that is a guarantee you need to track that asset, whatever that asset may be, right? So digital or not. If it's only one of them, I think if it's mission critical, it must be. I think if it affects risk, it may not be, because it depends. If it's only affecting risk and it's not mission critical and it's not affecting the budget, the question is, how risky is it?
Right. I was going to say there's levels of risk.
Right. Because my go-to example for this always is Spotify, right? Which I get so much heat for not having a Spotify. People, whenever I go out with my friends in the car and
me too.
I have Apple Music playing, they're like, you don't use Spotify? I'm like, no. They're like, how do you live? I'm like a human. But Spotify for the longest time on a Mac was such a crap program. It would actually cause problems with the Mac itself. It would cause the computer to lock up. This is years ago we're talking about. So the question is Spotify in that case enough of a risk that we have to actually poll the computer to determine who has Spotify and or stop it or crash it, or do we care? The answer for that is usually no, but I'm sure there's programs out there that would matter. For example, if clients randomly install a third-party VPN software, right? Are you pulling the information from your assets and logging the data saying this user, then you can go even further and say, I want to log everything, and I want to know when this user installed the program at what time, because it turns out they installed a VPN at 9 p.m. at night on a Friday. Clearly there's something up. You can go down that rabbit hole. But in that case, if they're installing the VPN, that's a high risk and potentially affects the budget.
Yeah. And, we do this all the time. Think about it. As an MSP, when you vet a new vendor for a tool in your stack, one of the questions you typically ask is, do you have an API that links to my PSA so that if somehow I go from 10 users at a client to 15 users at a client, I know to bill that client for those 5 additional users? That's important. That is one of those budgetary examples. And if we ask for it from our vendors, clients are going to ask for it from us as well.
Yeah, I think that is. I never thought about it that way. To just, straight up start asking people, are you compatible? Because like when you go into, for us, when we go into Halo, we look at our integrations page and we see what's there, but then there's the button that says custom, right? And I never thought like, yeah, maybe a vendor may not be working with Halo directly, but they have that custom integration to go in. You know, we keep track of the computers that come in from our MDM and from Adigy and Datto. But I did realize that we don't actually have a pull in from Simple MDM, which was one of the MDM providers we were also using. And now it's got me thinking, like, what do we need to, because they have an API, like, what do we need to do to make that work? You know, and then should we be using something like OS Query, which, by the way, we should find someone to do an entire episode on OS Query. I just recently found out about this thing, and it blows my mind. It's cross-platform compatible. There's amazing ways to do this. We should talk to somebody. But should we be using OS Query to query all of the USB ports on the device so that we have all that information? Because then again, if somebody loses a keyboard, is that mission critical, or is that high risk, or is that affecting the budget?
So keyboard, no. USB drive, yes.
So we do. Yeah, okay, so there you go. So the problem is that we have to actually pull all that stuff and log it somewhere, and then but then do we report on it?
So this is where I actually think you use an RMM or an MDM and create monitoring scripts for these types of things if they're not already built in, right?
Yeah.
If somebody plugs in a USB and that's weird, it's unusual, you've set a rule that that's weird for that client,
yeah,
then you should get notified. Like it should throw off an alarm in your RMM, maybe create a ticket to say, hey, somebody stuck a USB drive in this computer, and they don't usually do that.
Yeah, but that sounds like it requires a lot of, like, the two letters I don't like saying, to figure out whether or not, you know, USB drive usage is high or
so
not.
yes,
I don't even know if that's possible.
You could do it with that agent in a box, or you could just set it as a policy, right? And so that if anybody sticks in a USB drive, it gets flagged immediately. Now, that's one way to do it. The other way to do it is prevent it from happening at all. And that's to create a policy on the computer that says they can't use USB drives on that computer.
Yeah. Which is easier to do on a PC than on a Mac. I'm putting this out there because yes, you can do it on a Mac, but on a PC, I think it's built into the Windows security protocols to like disable USB drives without disabling USB other things.
Devices.
Yeah. Not non-USB drives would be the word I'm looking for.
That kind of brings up an interesting part of this because it's also data. We're kind of straying from assets here a little bit into configuration. And I know that that's a thing that there are some new vendors out there who are actually watching configurations, whether it's on endpoints or whether it's on cloud applications like 365, where they're looking constantly for configuration drift and either letting you know or remediating.
So again, though, let's take this back. If there is a configuration change, that information gets recorded to your PSA. There's your data point. Then what do you do with that data? Do you report on that to the customer?
I don't think you report it to the customer, no, but it is something you need to take a look at as the MSP.
To be on top of things. Now, the other question then also is, and this happens a lot of MSPs, I think, are not charging enough money to warrant putting these tools into their stack. And some of them are stuck now at a 125 range, which, by the way, I don't remember where I was reading this. Somebody had posted that they charged 125 British pounds per hour, and everybody in that place was like, "You're so expensive." And I was like, I don't know how things work over there. I really had to have a phone call with our friend Pete Matheson. But the US-based ones that are in that $125 per device range, they're I feel like they're getting their asses handed to them at this point because, you know, you buy into so many of these security tools, you're not making any money now. So,
well, yeah.
What do you do?
That's the disparity, right? If you walk up to somebody who is selling managed services for $125 per user, run. Okay. I'm sorry. And I'm probably hurting some people's feelings who are in this group, but we've gotten to the point where security is not optional. Right. And in order to have the security tools in place to not only protect your clients, but to protect yourself, you're going to be charging more than $125 a month per user. It's not feasible anymore.
If you feel hurt by the words of Eric Anthony, please reach out at facebook.com/group/allthingsmsp. If you're watching at youtube.com/allthingsmsp, I just made Eric Anthony laugh so hard that he started coughing. That's where we're at now. But you're right. The people need to push that thing. So I think let's just try to tie this up with a bow, right? Yes, collect information that is pertinent to make your business be better for the customer. Find ways to automate what you do with that data. You don't necessarily need to report on that data, but do collect as much as you possibly can, because you never know when there's going to be something, either A, terrible happens and you are on top of it looking like the hero, or B, you have this data to be able to come back and say, listen, we can make these things more efficient and therefore free up our time, therefore to get more customers. And now you can handle 2 customers at the same time that you normally used to be able to handle 1, because you've collected that data, figured out what to do with it, seen how it interacts with the rest of the processes for that customer or you.
Right. There are so many things that you can find out by using data, whether it's to become more efficient, whether it's to lower your risk, whether it's to lower your costs, whatever it is. Don't be afraid to collect that data, because a lot of times the data collection is automated, right? It's the data reporting and making it useful that actually takes the time. So collect the data, but then only spend the time appropriately to actually get the things out of it to make your business better.
And I will say there is one piece of data that most people do not collect and that they should, and that is the name of the CEO's dog. Because if you can talk to the CEO about their dog and name the dog by its name, you are in like Flynn, baby.
I don't even know where to go with that.
That's why I'm ending it right now. Check us out, facebook.com/group/allthingsmsp. Watch all of this in high def glory, youtube.com/@allthingsmsp. Check out my new zoomed in camera that I'm going to work on over the next couple episodes. Follow us on all of your favorite podcasting tools, but you're listening to us right now. Do leave a comment in the Facebook group. Let us know you heard us, that you like us, that you love us, you hate us, whatever. If it's hate, it's towards Eric. If it's love, it's towards me. We'll take it like that. Any last words before we say goodbye, Mr. Anthony?
I just want to say that last comment is not very data-driven of you.
Nope, not at all. It's because the data proves the other way around. Everybody loves you and hates me, but that's it. I'm Justin. Bye!
Thanks for listening, and don't forget to subscribe to us on your favorite podcast platform. You can also follow us on Facebook, but better yet, go ahead and join the Facebook group. You can also follow us on Instagram if that's your thing. And make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel at All Things MSP to catch us in all of our video glory. And last but certainly not least, if LinkedIn is your thing, you can follow us there as well. And a special thank you to our premier sponsors, SuperOps, MoveBot, Gozinta, EasyDmark, and Comtech. And we also want to thank our vendor sponsors. The All Things MSP Podcast is a BizPow LLC production.